I'm Mike Marzo with a recap of day 4 of the Sean Diddy Combs trial. And the prosecution's star witness, Cassie Ventura, facing a long day of cross-examination. Combs' team introducing hundreds of messages between the pair, many of them explicit. The defense hoping these messages will convince jurors that Ventura enthusiastically participated in these marathon sex sessions, dubbed freak-offs. We're going to spend time talking about today's testimony with the ABC legal analyst Channa Lloyd. That's in just a moment, but first up, Eyewitness News reporter Kimberly Richardson with a recap of what happened inside court.
A relationship where jealousy, infidelity, and violence went both ways. That's how the defense sums up Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura's relationship. Today is Ventura's first day of cross-examination. The defense has thousands of messages the couple sent to each other. Many Ventura read out loud. Early on in their relationship, Ventura told Combs, quote, "I love you so much, it consumes my life."
We saw the bad and the ugly through the prosecution, but now the defense is showing the good parts.
Ventura testified things eventually went south. A central point of contention, she maintains, so-called freak-offs, sex and drug-fueled encounters that involved escorts. She insisted she did not want to take part, but defense attorney Ana Estevo introduced this exchange. Ventura, quote, "I'm always ready to freak off. Combs, I can't wait to watch you. I want you to get real hot." She replies, quote, "Me too. I just want to be uncontrollable." But when the defense tried to frame things a certain way, Ventura wasn't having it. She sent this message to Combs, quote, "I miss you. I miss our love-making sessions in the afternoons." When asked if that meant freak-offs, Ventura said not necessarily. Ventura testified even after this exchange in 2016, during what she says Combs hit her in the face. She tried to rekindle their romance. There was one woman she believed was standing in her way, Kim Porter, the mother of 3 of Combs' kids who passed away in 2018. This afternoon, Ventura told jurors she had some jealousy of Porter, adding she wanted to be integrated into his life with his kids, sending this message to Combs, quote, "I'm here, ready to be that woman, and I'm in a constant fight because you won't ever allow it. This isn't what I want. I cannot become that woman this way." And in 2015, while Combs was dating a woman only named as Gina, Ventura began a relationship with actor Michael B. Jordan. Inside the courtroom today, it was really fascinating to watch. When Ventura was testifying, when she would say certain things, Combs would whisper something into his attorney's ear. He would write something on a Post-it. That attorney would hand it right back to the attorney who was questioning Ventura.
Our thanks to Kimberly Richardson for that recap, joined now by ABC News legal analyst Channa Lloyd. First of all, those messages were tame compared to what people in the courtroom actually saw today. Take us inside and how that played as you're seeing these sexually explicit messages displayed on those monitors.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, Mike, when I saw the messages, I was a little taken aback. Yeah. You know, these were very, very tame compared to what we saw. They were very explicit in nature. They went into extensive detail as to what she was looking forward to, how she felt sexually towards Sean. All of that came in, and we saw it in an actual text message. So the defense was really trying to put that in.
Let's talk about the defense's strategy today. They're trying to create what they consider a fuller picture of the relationship, the 11-year relationship. At one point, they got her to admit that she was in love with Sean Combs for 11 years. And at many points, according to the messages, she's the one that initiated these so-called sex sessions dubbed freak-offs. How did that play in the courtroom? And what was Sean Combs doing as he's listening to this testimony?
Well, I'll tell you, when they introduced these ideas and concepts, you definitely saw the jury take a second look, right? Because this is directly contrary to what we have seen for the last 2 days. These text messages clearly reflect the fact that she wanted to be a part of his life. She wanted to be included on vacations with his children. She wanted to be that wife to him that she was not. And so we see that clearly laid out. So you saw the jury definitely take a closer look at that, because now that we have the complete chain of text messages, we see where some of the freak-offs were actually actually initiated by her. He didn't mention them, and she brought them up, initiating that sort of conversation. So that changed the dynamic in the courtroom a little bit. Mr. Combs was really just sitting at the desk. He looked ahead. He didn't seem to have much comments. He was definitely paying attention, though, to the cross-examination. He was writing notes. We did see that.
There was a point where even the defense attorney admitted that she was kind of all over the place. It was described as meandering, this cross-examination. But sometimes that could be a strategy, right? What do you make of the approach and the style of the defense today?
Well, I think we have to remember that the judge confined them. They do have to finish in a day and a half, the same amount of time that was allotted to the direct. So she had to change strategy. I believe she thought she had a little bit more time. So that created some of that. But the meandering, sometimes when you walk away, you walk up to it a little bit and then you come back with another question, because then people don't know, and the actual witness on the stand doesn't know what direction you're headed. So they're likely to give you a lot more information than you bargained for. By the time you come back to that line of questioning, they have likely forgotten the initial statements. So you get a lot more information, and without that sort of gotcha moment. It's used a lot when we have someone like Cassie, who is a very sympathetic witness. She is very pregnant. You do not want to be the attorney that is being very harsh or seeming like you're trying to get her. And so I think that bodes better with the jury over time.
How did the defense do today? I mean, not that it's a grade type situation, but were they effective in trying to point out some of the inconsistencies, or at least not the complete picture of what the prosecution laid out?
I think they were effective in really showing that what we saw yesterday was not the total story. What it did is it provided a lot more context, and we saw a lot more detail than we had yesterday. So it's not just one or two text messages. Now we're getting pages and we're seeing full conversation. So that changes the way we're looking at those individual text messages that the prosecution was showing.
Before the trial, this is something the prosecution did not want to happen. They tried to limit all of the text messages, right?
Absolutely. And up until yesterday, actually, in court, they were arguing about not admitting all of these chains. The prosecution has been seeking to keep it out, so much so that when they had introduced a couple of the initial text messages, the prosecution stood up and objected vigorously twice. I think, though, that the jury definitely became much more keen. They were looking forward to seeing the text messages because it creates that feeling of, why don't you want us to see these text messages? So once they were introduced, the jury was paying attention.
The defense also got Cassie Ventura to admit that she was jealous, primarily of Kim Porter, the late Kim Porter, the mother of Sean Combs' 3 children.
That is correct.
And so what does that do for the defense in trying to get at least the jurors to open their minds to their side of how they view things?
So the defense is putting that forward because when she made that statement on direct where she said, I was insanely jealous, this now provides context, because now we have an individual who's in his life, the mother of his children, who he has children with, that she has a direct object. So they see how this actually creates that complex dynamic in their relationship.
And then one other question about that is, when you talk about the full picture of these text messages, we also learned that Sean Combs overdosed back in, I think it was 2012. And so you're learning some detail. And the bottom, just as reading this, it just seemed like a very sad, tragic, violent situation. And so how does a jury read all of that as we are just a few days into what we expect to be a couple of months of trial?
Absolutely. The overdose was a very big portion of today. They talked a lot about the drug use, and it was excessive drug use. I mean, we're talking about everything from mushrooms to cocaine to GHB to ketamine. These are significant drugs that the average person is not necessarily going to be surprised when they hear about these cocktails. So I think, that also factors into the overdose and how they went from, using drugs very, very often and very regularly to then trying to rehab. So that adds to that dynamic. Now, as far as the jury listening to all of this, I think it just is something that they're listening to the full story. And then when they have all the pieces, they're really going to look at it more thoroughly.
Much more to come. I mentioned weeks ahead, but let's talk about in the hours ahead. What do we expect to happen next? Because the cross-examination is not finished.
Correct.
And then the prosecution has an opportunity to do what? A redirect, right?
Absolutely. We're going to see the defense finish their cross. They have half a day. And then we have to remember we are going to see the redirect. The purpose of the redirect is that the prosecution is going to rehabilitate anything they feel was damaging on cross-examination. So we'll see them go back to the video. We'll see them go back to, how did you feel? You did not want to participate. They want to end on that note, and that is likely what we'll see Friday afternoon.
All right, Channa Lloyd, always appreciate your perspective. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Another big day of testimony continues tomorrow. As we mentioned, Cassie's cross-examination will continue. And stay with Eyewitness News and ABC7NY all day. We have a real-time blog running so you can get updates wherever you are. And then we'll have details coming out of the courtroom as the Diddy trial continues.